look or look around and it'd be a smile every time you look back at the congregation and stuff in the church. He was I always was always a smile on his face.
I think
really
well worth it.
Yeah.
I welcome you, those that are gathered here today. Some are not with us today because they're feeling ill, like Pam and Peter Mackey. And I welcome those who are joining us online on our Facebook page for our live streaming of our Bible study. And so we started a little bit early just to give you a chance to connect with us and get set for our study. We lifted up several different prayer concerns as we've been sitting here. We want to be praying for, should I kill that thing?
It's up to you. I mean, you can't bother me.
Oh.
There you go.
It's a cricket.
Is it a cricket?
No, it wasn't.
No, all
That
right.
box elder bug.
Oh, it better not be a cricket. That's bad luck.
Uh-oh. But we want to be praying for Bev Zacharias. She has pancreatic cancer. She wasn't doing well yesterday, and I imagine she's not doing well today. She's at home, though, and we thank God for that. We also want to lift up the Greeny family as they say goodbye to their 38-year-old son. And I'll be in Rochester officiating over that service, family service, on Friday. So if you ever want to follow me around, know where I'm on the road, I'm all over the place. We also, good news, we've been praying for Alex Harding, and he's 31 years old, has pancreatic condition, and it's not curable, but it's treatable. And so we thank God for that. Are there other concerns that we could lift up and have prayer regarding before we start?
Bill Mann's on his final treatment sessions.
Bill Mann is on his final treatments. Debbie oftentimes has come here to church. That's her husband. Any other concerns? And I'd like to remind those of you who join us from a distance that you can email your concerns to kirkvilleumc@gmail.com. And we'd love to add your concerns to our list of prayer concerns and be praying regularly for your concerns. And also celebrating your joys as well. So please do that. Now we celebrated joy. We've had a young mother, Marianne, who's participated with us for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And she wants her infant daughter, Savannah, baptized here soon. And we've got to figure out technologically how we're going to be able to do that. Where there's a will, there's a way, and we will do that. We want everyone to be able to join in that celebration.
You saw that cartoon I sent you.
Yes, I did. How about if we have some prayer together? Gracious loving God, we thank you for our gathering together. I thank you that we've been able to, again, produce 100 meals that will be taken to the men's shelter in downtown Syracuse to alleviate some of the struggle and frustration that homeless people have. And gracious God, I thank you that we can be in ministry in that way, just as we are in ministry in other ways, making other meals for other places. And gracious God, and during this time of this plague, we know that we need to be intentionally connective to one another. So Lord, I just ask you might put on our heart to look through our directory, in that we can find a name and we can give them a call and just check up on them. We don't have to be disconnected. It just takes a little bit of our effort. And gracious God, it's well worth the effort. We just ask that you might be with those concerns we just lifted up. And we also ask, oh God, that you would open our eyes and our mind and our heart, that we might then be responsive to your word. For it is through your word that we are guided through the difficulties of life, and that we see the light of hope within our daily lives. Be with those who join us from a distance. May you bless them, and may they be blessed by participating with us. For I ask that in the name of Jesus. Amen. Again, if you want to share your observations or your questions, you may do so. My phone is on. I did take it off in its silent mode. I forgot to do that last time. And so you can text your observations and questions to 315-345-6534. And you notice that we have a few other personages in joining us for Bible study. These are our bears that are available for $25 a piece. They're homemade. And the money that we receive from them goes directly to support the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So I thank you for that consideration. Holiday times are coming. I know that downstairs, I think that Cindy will have a catalog for Princess House if you want to order some gifts. And I know that my daughter, who has a catalog down there for books, if you want to order some children's books and other materials.
And myself and Bonnie have been passing out crosses.
Passing out crosses, just so you don't pass out.
That's right.
We include a cross in each of the lunches and also passages of Scripture today, which we haven't done before. What we're doing today is we're looking at the Gospel of John, but we're looking at chapter 18 and 19. And what we're doing is I didn't send out questions, I sent out an email in which I then asked if you would compare the account in the Gospel of John with other Gospel accounts. Because as we know, there's great differences between John's account and the other accounts. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like for us to start at John 18:1. And I've got this book that I use, A Harmony of the Four Gospels. And that what it has the Gospel accounts next to one another. So it makes it easier to compare one Gospel account to another.
Where'd you get that?
Bookstore.
Did
You can get it from Cokesbury. So
You can get it at all.
Who's the author?
Orville E. Daniel.
All right.
Called Harmony of the Gospels.
Okay, gotcha.
So it starts with 18:1. This is the NIV edition.
Okay.
And it goes this way. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side, there was an olive grove, and he and his disciples went to it. So, the first thing that I notice, in comparing to the other ones, is that the other ones identify that garden as the Garden of Gethsemane, right? John doesn't identify that garden except for its location on the other side of the Kidron Valley. I've been there. It's kind of interesting. The Kidron Valley has also been called Gehenna. It is the place where they used to, in the old days, in the Old Testament, dump bodies and dump trash and all sorts of different things. And it was said there'd be fires that were continually burning from that valley.
Anything that they didn't want.
Well, they also had a channel going from the temples where they slaughtered all the Passover lambs, and all that blood also went into that valley.
Yes. So it's an interesting thing. And on the other side of that, you find then Gethsemane, and now that valley has a cemetery in it, if you go there. But I've been to Gethsemane. Not too many trees left, but they're big old trees dating before Jesus. And it's kind of interesting to be there. It's also important to note that he prayed then his longer prayer, which was in chapter 17, which the other Gospels don't have, where he prays for his disciples and prays for the church. Okay? Is not mentioned in the other Gospels. It's only mentioned in the Gospel of John. And it's obviously that he prayed that prayer in the upper room. Because it is after that upper room experience in which he then finished praying. After he finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the valley. On the other side, there was an olive grove. And that's where he also then, where the others Gospels have that Jesus went into that deep prayer of, if there was another way of doing this, Lord, I take it, but not my will, but yours be done. In which the disciples had a hard time because they ate too much, drank too much, and at the Passover meal, and it was getting late, and they had a hard time staying awake. Okay, and Jesus spoke to them about that. That's not mentioned here in John.
No, the only prayer he has is, whenever Peter cuts off the ear, saying, am I not supposed to drink the cup my Father has assigned me?
Yes. And that also is an unusual expression that is only found within John. If I turn some pages, because it goes to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it picks up then over in John 18:2. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. That's some more new information that we get, that we don't have from the other. We just all of a sudden he went to the garden. But this tells us that Jesus often met with his disciples there. He was following the pattern that he would often do in going there to pray. So he came to the grove. So Judas came to the grove, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Now, what's the next thing that you see? Because I don't want to just draw these out myself. That you see that's not mentioned in the other disciples, other versions.
Did the other ones mention that there was a detachment of soldiers, which means there were a lot of soldiers, not just a couple soldiers. They had like a whole troop of soldiers that came to get this one unarmed man.
A detachment may not be a large number, but oftentimes, because Rome had the power, the control, there would be temple guards. So they would have sent the temple guards, but they would have reinforcements of 8 or 9 of the Roman guards.
And I think even at night, because they had so much torches, lanterns, and things that made noise, they still wanted to semi-sneak in so that he wouldn't get away.
Well, one of the reasons they may have had the torches is because it was a full moon at that time, and so there was plenty of light. But
Right.
they came there thinking they were going to have to search for Jesus.
Right.
That he was going to be hiding among the trees, and they would need these lighting sources.
And of course,
They didn't expect him to step up and say, "Here I am."
yes. And so that's another interesting thing, is because Jesus wasn't hiding at all. He was not avoiding what he knew was going to be happening. You notice that in Mark, he mentions the betrayal on signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. And so on in Matthew, now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Luke doesn't have that, except that he says he approached Jesus to kiss him. So what John has is Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and he asked them. So he stepped out and asked them, "Who is it you want?"
It's me.
"Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And when Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth." "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. Now it's important that he said that Judas the betrayer was standing there with them. We have to ask the question is, who is he standing with? Was he standing next to Jesus? Was he standing next to the other disciples? Was he standing next to the officials and the detachment? We don't really know. We have to use our imagination. Okay. What does it make any difference? It shows that, for me, that where he's standing, the thinking of that, shows us about the nature of betrayal. Betrayal is one that we can be close and believe correctly, but still err in our judgment and our choices. And we sometimes like to look at and point fingers at those other people, the Jews, the Romans, and Judas, and say, "Boy, those guys, those folks." Instead of realizing that we could be also standing among them, the disciples, and still be a betrayer, whether we know it or not. I have my own theory. I think that Judas felt he was doing what Jesus wanted him to do, and he was provoking an incident where all of a sudden he would call forth his supporters to rise up against, Rome's control, which
But Judas had left the disciples, so he obviously didn't arrive at Gethsemane with them.
No, he
So
did not arrive with
He
them.
must have come with the.
So if you can imagine, he comes up, he goes over and gives Jesus a kiss, and then he stands over with those who are with Jesus. That's kind of the image that
But
I
he didn't
have.
give a kiss in John.
Hmm?
He didn't give a kiss in John.
Didn't give a kiss in John. What's interesting in verse 4, Jesus, knowing that all was going to happen to him, went out and asked. So one of the differences between John and the other Gospels is that the other Gospels have what's more called narrative. Okay? Narrative is story. And within John, we have more teaching. John's intention was to provide teaching. That's why it's the most quoted of the Gospels, except when you get around certain passages in Matthew and such. You do lift that up, like the Beatitudes, which are in Matthew chapter 5. Those aren't mentioned in John. So it's more teaching and a theological content. So it's intentionally, he says that Jesus knew what was going to happen to him. What does that say to you, that he knew?
It was part of the plan.
Part of the plan.
Maybe his father had foretold it somehow to him in a dream.
Okay. Or revealed it to him in some way. So that shows that the uniqueness of Jesus, his divinity. Because what he shares with God is that ability to comprehend, to read into circumstances, to know what's going to be happening. The omniscience of God was also, at least partially, within Jesus himself.
Well, he was doing it to glorify his Father and himself.
Correct. But I think that John is trying to lift up the fact, see, this is not just ordinary man. It says that he comes out and faces his destiny. That's important for me when I read that, just if I apply this to myself, because I want to be a follower of Jesus, is, what is my destiny? I can look at my life, here I am, I live here, I have my family, I have all these different things in my life, and that's part of my destiny. What's going to be happening in the future, I do not know. Jesus knew. But sometimes we try to resist the destiny. We want to be something other than what we are, in which God is really saying, be who you are, who I've made you to be. But then how you are who you are is important. We are to give the best. We are to be following him in all things. Now, it comes to this other. He asked them a couple of times, who is it you want? Jesus already knew that. Right? So why did he bother asking him? Why would he bother asking? Who is it you want?
Probably wanted to see what they would say. And how they would describe the person they were looking for.
Okay. All right.
They didn't just say Jesus, they said Jesus of Nazareth.
Yep. That's important. He said Jesus of Nazareth. So they're looking at where he came from. Okay. So is Jesus just an ordinary man who came from Nazareth? Was he a itinerant, self-appointed, ordained rabbi that preached among Galilee and then came and stirred up trouble in Jerusalem?
I think he was listening to the reactions.
He was the thorn in their side.
On their side.
Oftentimes God asks us questions. We like answers, but we can't receive the answers until we know what the questions are. And part of reflection and prayer is thinking through ourselves and what we're feeling and asking the right questions. Because when we think of, oh Lord, answer my prayer, the question is whether we are really listening. And God will help guide us in the questions that God will ask us. The question is, who is it you want? They were looking for Jesus of Nazareth. I am he. This is an interesting thing. When Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Interesting. Some would have different ideas of what that meant. That all of a sudden, overwhelming personality of Jesus as being more than just Jesus of Nazareth overwhelmed them, or else his willingness to stand forth and be identified overwhelmed them. They were not expecting that.
They were
As Bonnie
shocked.
said,
They were shocked.
they're shocked. And then still others feel that there is just the power of God that just all of a sudden this hidden wave of power all of a sudden, boom, and knocked them over. I don't discourage that necessarily, but I'd rather believe it was dark. And all of a sudden they step back because here is this guy they're coming to arrest and he's right here. He's not resisting. Who does that? So they drew back and probably tripped over one another's feet or roots in the garden and fell down. It's up to you to feel how you want that to be.
Well, they came expecting to have to search for this person among all the olive trees and everything. So the fact that he stepped out, I mean, that was totally unexpected.
Totally unexpected. That's another principle that John is trying to relate to us. Look to Jesus to do that which is unexpected. We always have our expectations, even in religion. This is what I've known. This is what I've experienced. So I don't expect that Jesus is going to do any more than what I've experienced. And sometimes that's a little dangerous. I know in my prayers I can get to praying, well, I've prayed for someone who's had cancer or had this, and it didn't make any difference. And all of a sudden the Holy Spirit kind of speaks into my ear, my head, and my heart, saying, how do you know? Is it worth praying it?
Things might have gone better for them because you prayed for them, even though the end result was not good.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been more a peaceful passing.
And there are times in which I've seen God miraculously answer prayers in a way that's unexpected. Some people say it's unexpected and coincidence. Others people will look at that as saying a miracle.
Wasn't Judas a disciple for quite a while before he turned on Jesus?
We don't have a story about when Judas became a disciple. We don't have that narrative anywhere where they tried to avoid.
I mean, was
Judas
he?
as much as possible.
Was Judas?
He wasn't a newcomer. No.
He was very close to Jesus
Yeah,
because John was on one side and Judas was on the other side in the upper room.
Yes.
So somebody
He was
or
very close to him.
somebody or some circumstances changed him and made him go after Jesus.
That may not be what he did,
Okay.
though. He
Okay.
might have been trying to force Jesus to assert his power
Okay.
and take over on earth,
Okay.
not knowing that Jesus' kingdom was in heaven.
Okay.
So he probably thought, I want to see the Romans overturned, so I need to push Jesus into showing what his power is, and Jesus didn't want to do that.
So oftentimes, well-meaning but misguided disciples can cause more harm. But yet at the same time, Jesus realized and included his zealot nature and concern into the plan. Okay?
Somebody had to betray him.
This one is very important,
Exactly.
is that there's nothing we can do to prevent God's plan from being accomplished. Can we cooperate with God? And so cooperating in the way that we should, that we can facilitate the plan. Can we resist that plan? But it's not going to stop God from doing what God has ordained. God will use us in spite of or despite us. I take great pleasure in that thought, because I can look back, even as I've had to counsel some pastors the past couple of weeks in my Salem ministries, who are being frustrated because of COVID and all the other circumstances in our culture. And to be able to realize that if we stay the course and try to stay close to Jesus and do the best that we can that we know Jesus wants us to do, that God will use us in spite of or despite ourselves. I can look back in my career and I can say, man, if I could redo that. Okay? But you see, God used that as part of God's plan.
You can't go back.
God uses us as part of God's plan, whether we realize it or not. I want you to think about that. God will use us, okay, despite or in spite of us, to accomplish His plan. And that puts more onus, if you would, on God. God is God. We are not. And sometimes we hold ourselves and what we do as being too important, too essential. On the other hand, there's a balance to it. No, it does matter what we say and what we do. But we have the freedom to know that even if I mess up, or you mess up, God can use it. If I mess up and I realize that I messed up, the simple response is, man, Lord, I messed up. Help me not do that again. Show me why I did what I did or said what I did. Guide me. Give me insight because I want to follow you more nearly, more dearly. And that is the heart that really honors God. Not that we're always so perfect in our response. But enough of that. I know for me, I just think that they were taken back by the fact that here is Jesus and he's got 12 or more dudes, with him. And they came with swords expecting there might be a tussle. And Jesus steps right out and says, hey, dudes, what do you want? What are you looking for? They didn't realize who they were looking for. So this is a witness. The question that he asks of them is a question that's asked of us. Who is it you want? So that's a question when I go to prayer, as I was reading this passage, I would ask me, who is it that I want? Who is Jesus? What is my image of Jesus that I want in my life? Who is it I'm really looking for? Who is it I'm really following? Am I really following the real Jesus? Or have I concocted an image of Jesus that I'm really following? And I think that's an important question. That's only mentioned here. Okay? Because John is a theological thinker, a philosophical thinker. He's helping us to think. I told you that I am he. If you're looking for me, then let these men go. You got me. So he's protecting his own. This happened that the words are spoken to be fulfilled. I have not lost one of those you gave me. Then, we go down, verse 10, Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Okay, now I want to ask the question there. What's different from here than in the other Gospels?
Why didn't anybody attack Peter?
Good question.
I mean, we had all those soldiers there that were fully armed, and nobody went after Peter for slicing off one of his ear.
And the image you have is he just took out a sword and went, cut off his ear. It may have been something different. He grabbed him, put him behind him, and, it didn't mean to harm him. We don't know. But how's that different from the other ones?
Do some of the other ones have somebody put the ear back on?
Yeah. If we look into Luke, we find that when Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? They asked. Should we defend you? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. Now, he doesn't identify him as Peter. Only John identifies him as Peter. Now, in Mark, it says, then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, Matthew, drew it out and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear.
None of the other ones say his right ear, do they?
Nope.
Yes, sir. Was there a symbolism to the right ear?
Except for Luke. Luke says right ear.
Was there a reason? That's what I was wondering. Was there a reason why they did the right ear?
That's interesting. I haven't thought.
I know there is in some of the Crusades. There's reasons why they did certain body parts.
We each have certain body parts that are stronger than others. If you're right-handed, your right arm is stronger. Your right leg is stronger. Your right ear, right eye is stronger.
But none of the biblical passages.
Maybe just the way he was facing.
Just okay. All right.
I have no idea.
All right. Okay.
that'd be trying to read in too much.
Because
right?
if you faced him, if he had a sword in his right hand,
Doesn't make
he
it
would
better.
most likely hit his left ear. Unless he crossed over.
So what happened is that you say, but Jesus answered in Luke, no more of this. And he touched the man's ear and healed him.
Right here.
Okay? You know, maybe that it didn't lop off and fall to the ground, but put your sword away.
Okay.
And then he tells them in Luke, am I leading a rebellion? In Mark, am I leading a rebellion? In Matthew, am I leading a rebellion that you come out with swords and clubs? The only thing we have in...
Well, it doesn't kill him, it just injures him and causes him so he can't hear out of one side.
Well, you probably
Right.
still hear
Probably
because
still
your
hear.
outer ear doesn't make
Yeah.
any difference.
Jesus healed him.
Yeah.
But identifies the difference is it identifies who was the person
Okay.
that cut the ear, and that's Simon Peter.
Okay.
He also gives some other detail. The servant was named Malchus.
Right, that name.
Mm-hmm.
No other place is the name Malchus. Why?
There's got to be some history. There's got to be some history to Malchus and his relationship to the high priest, I would think.
I think we could look at every name in the Bible and think that there's something.
There's something.
Yeah, that's true. That could be true. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that,
That's all right.
except for I think the reason why he
It's more
went
like,
to such detail to lift up Malchus, because I really wonder if Malchus became a disciple.
because
Oh,
but Malchus,
okay.
they gave him a name, so it gives him a personage. It's
Mm.
not just
Mhm.
a person
It's
got
not
his ear cut off.
yeah.
But remember, John is writing at a later time, and I think we'll find that that Malchus became a disciple. Do you want to know? I read something last night about Pontius Pilate. I'm going to challenge you with this. He served as the governor in Judea for 10 years. Usually, you're only governor for 3 years. And then he went away, came back, and he served again. And then it disappears. There's some question historically what happened to Pontius Pilate. We know that he existed, that he was true, real. There are several different historical descriptions from the past. One of those is that if you did something that dishonored Rome, you were given your opportunity to commit suicide.
Mm.
Okay? To save your face. I don't know why that means you save your face, but but anyways, we understand through in Japanese culture or Asian
And your
culture,
family
that
too. Your family.
Harakara.
Yeah, your family's.
Yes, so you suffered, but your family did
Yeah.
not.
Well, if you commit suicide, then you're not around to have all these things thrown at you, all these accusations and everything, because you're gone.
And there's several other
Family face.
things in history that was debated about, what happened to Pontius Pilate. The one that I find most fascinating that I read last night is all of a sudden Pontius Pilate leaves the scene because he became a follower of Jesus Christ. And the reason why they come to that conclusion is that the Ethiopian church, okay, has Pilate
Is it's
being a part of their community of faith. Isn't that interesting?
And Pilate should have had some real guilt going on.
Yeah.
He got blackmailed into getting Jesus crucified.
Mhm.
And, because he didn't want to do it, but he got forced to do it.
So we see that Pilate served, he then left the scene for a couple of years and comes back on the scene. Then disappears. And the Ethiopian church claims him.
Wow.
Whether that's enough historical proof, we can't say. But it's neat. Because he was wrestling within himself, what is truth?
Mm-hmm.
What is truth? And he really didn't like being used and manipulated. He had a high degree of right and wrong, sense of right and wrong.
He found no reason to do anything to Christ.
Right. So I'm taking it a little bit ahead, but I think it's interesting. And then all of a sudden it says Jesus' response is not about asking those who are coming against him, am I leading a rebellion? Of course, Jesus was not leading a rebellion. But in John it says, shall I not drink the cup my Father has given to me? Now, in the other Gospels, where he's in the garden and praying, What does Jesus pray?
Take this.
What was that? Go ahead.
Take this from me.
Take this cup from me, but if I must drink it. So while John doesn't mention that exact prayer in the garden, there's that understanding. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Shall I not face the destiny that I might have?
Well, and Judas probably believed that Jesus would lead a rebellion if he was forced
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
So the other ones put it into words, but Judas's feeling was probably what, that if I get Jesus riled up, he'll lead a rebellion.
He didn't know Jesus as much as he thought he did he?
No.
I heard that. Okay, Angelina. Is that you? No.
It's over here.
Oh, it's over here. Well, fine, ignore me.
Spam call.
Is that Angelina? Okay. What does she have to say? Big friend.
Oh, yeah. That's what happened.
Oh, hey, Sis Bonnie, I've been trying to get on since 1 p.m. with no success. I give up.
Oh,
I'm
she's
sorry.
not- She's
I don't know
not
why
on.
she can't get on. Let me double check the camera. And I think we're
Well,
good.
sometimes she has trouble.
Yep, we're still on. Oh, sorry, Angelina. We'll have to get you over here someday.
Yeah. Love to meet her.
She's a neat lady.
And you got a ramp so you can get her up.
Yep. Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. Then seizing him, as we go down, that's in Luke, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Now, we pick up at John 18, verse 12b. It says, they bound him. They brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Okay, so the high priesthood, the responsibility rotated between the elite, I'll put it that way. Okay, the slump. We'll put it that way. And Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it would be good if one man died for the people. And we can only interpret what that might have meant. We believe what that might have meant is that if Jesus were to die, there's two different things. That they would squelch a rebellion because they were fearful of the populace, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, that would squelch it so that Rome wouldn't come and destroy. Or else he might have been thinking that if Jesus died, that might unite the people. Ooh. So make him a martyr. So maybe he wanted a martyr. Go ahead.
I wonder what the Roman soldiers were thinking about this time. Jesus is now in front of them, healed the ear on the man.
Yep.
It's kind of dark out. I mean, they got the torches and the full moon, but they're out in the middle of the garden and stuff. Do you wonder that they're thinking, oh, jeez, I don't know about this. I don't know if I want to go grab this man and tether him up and drag him out. I mean, they just saw him heal.
Yep.
Do a healing, another of his miracles, which I'm sure they saw some of the others too,
Sure.
probably some of them.
Or heard about them.
They heard about them, but just standing there kind of in a dark night and everything, it's like, I don't know.
I think of you made me think about Koresh. Remember that compound in Texas?
Mm-hmm.
And surrounded by federal officers and such like that. And unlike Jesus, and he claimed to be a Messiah, right? Unlike Jesus stepped out and said, I am he. Let these others go. Koresh did not. Going to fight and die to the end.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
What is more evidence of integrity of who Jesus really is?
Pam says she is on, so it is working.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I think that there's a great comparison how Jesus faced his destiny, if you would, compared to how other people would face their destiny.
Yes. And right, and then right. the part about, she said about the soldiers, I'm sure they had the reactions, and they had Pontius Pilate also saying that there's really, I find no guilt with this person, but yet, well, fine, do as you will.
Double crowd.
Crowd approval.
So it gives us a little bit different taste of what, we know about the centurion, who, that's not mentioned in John, I don't think, who said, this certainly was the Son of God. That was the commander.
I don't know why, I don't.
And of course, that movie Risen has the
I don't know
commander
why,
being one who followed Jesus after that.
I don't know why Koresh didn't come out to. You would think that his biblical.
He wasn't.
Because he wasn't real.
He wasn't, yeah, right, he's a false prophet.
He's a false prophet.
But I thought he saw himself as a prophet.
Well, he did,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
And as he had young girls on his feet, he felt even more deserving of being a prophet. Anyway, verse 12b, they bound him, brought him to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one that predicted. We don't know what he meant by that. That's better if one man died for the people. We have the two choices. Would it be better that if he died and then quenched the rebellion of the zealots, okay, which could have brought reprisal from Rome, and eventually did in 70 AD, or would it be that, hey, if this man dies as a martyr, that will unite God's people, which didn't happen. So I probably would pick the other, the previous. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. And Jesus responds, I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews came together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. See, at this point, one of the rules of interrogation for the Jewish authorities was that you brought the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. They didn't. They, at this point, they basically brought him before the high priest. The high priest questioned him. And so they were not doing what was right and not following the law. They were trying to force their own agenda. In other words, if you are doing things right, then you do what is right. In other words, the ends do not justify the means. The means are ratified by the end.
If you're going to convict me, then
be honest.
Then bring it forward. Let me see that.
Correct.
Bing, bing, bing.
Correct.
Who's against me or what I've
So
done.
in other words, for us, when we want vindication, how we do, we might have good intentions,
Innocent until
but
proven guilty.
good intentions are followed up by righteous behavior. So I'll put that in our context. Black lives do matter. Yes, there's social injustice. There's subtle changes in our racial politics that have not been addressed. I say subtle, but at the same time, does not come through burning of buildings, killing of people, and those type of things.
God has the final say.
The righteousness of your claim is proven by your actions.
Yes.
And Machiavellian means the end justifies the means. So if I have to do terrible things to get the ends that I want, that doesn't make it morally right. Okay. So I have spoken openly. I have said nothing in secret. That's important. So we as Christians need to take that to heart. We do not say things in secret. If I feel this way or I feel that way, I let it be known. I may be wrong. You can prove me wrong. That's okay. But I'm not going to be secretive. I'm not going to go behind someone's back and say blah 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 blah. Or I'm not going to, you get the drift of that. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. He was trying to say you should be doing this in an appropriate way. Okay?
They had to get it done. They didn't have time for all the witnesses.
Oh yeah, we didn't have time for this.
Before the pastor, they were going to do this. Gotta be.
We got to get you gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the important
Because
thing.
Passover's coming, and then we're gonna really have a problem if we don't get it
When
done.
Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby struck him in the face. This is the way you answer the high priest, he demanded. Now, this is not in the other Gospels. Okay. If I said something wrong, Jesus replied, testify to what is wrong. Give evidence. Prove it. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me? You are not supposed to strike the accused. Jewish law.
You're not supposed to question the accused either.
No, that's supposed to be.
You're not supposed to, not
You're supposed
disrespect.
to bring forth
And don't
witnesses, and it goes
Yeah,
through another
don't-
process.
right, don't disrespect the high priest either.
Well, one of the things too, they say that one of the reasons that Annas wanted him first is that one of the ways Annas made money was the money changers in the temple that Jesus had thrown out. So he has a bone to pick with Jesus. Angelina's on.
Oh, good. Welcome, Angelina. That is true. Then we go to 18:15. It says that Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Now it said that Peter followed at a distance, and the others into the courtyard. But in John 18 it says Simon Peter and another disciple. We don't know who the disciple was. That's new information. Many have supposed that it was John. Why John? Why did John know the high priest or the persons in the high priest's household? We do not know.
Well, they think that it might have been because his father was in the saltfish business
Mm-hmm.
and provided saltfish to the high priest. Therefore, John may have made deliveries there, so he was familiar with, the servants and with the high priest.
Just so we can make sure it goes, that's a good answer. Make sure that goes, William Barclay brought that out. Make sure that you say that loudly enough so that they can hear it online.
Okay, what it is what William Barclay had said was that John, whose father was well-to-do and hired many people, he was big in the saltfish business because there wasn't many way to transport the fresh fish, and salt was a big thing, or saltfish was a big thing in their diet. So that John probably visited the high priest's office, probably even delivering. So he knew that the servant girl that was at the gate, so that he was able to get Peter in, and so that's why he would know the high priest.
That's very good. So that's where the intersection of history that we can find is very, very important. But Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. He's with me. He's okay. All right. Take his temperature,
Put the mask on.
You're in that. Make sure you have your mask on. You are not one of his disciples, are you? That wasn't really accusatory. It was more informative.
Did she say? Doesn't she say two?
No, I'm not here. I see it. The girl at the door asked Peter. He replied, I am not. Then it was cold, and the servant and the officials stood around the fire they had made to keep warm. Peter also was standing with them, warming himself. Then Annas sent him, Jesus meaning, still bound to Caiaphas the high priest. So another inappropriate procedure is they went to Annas instead of Caiaphas. Caiaphas had been previously the high priest. He wasn't the high priest now. And
Caiaphas was a high priest now. Annas had been the high priest previously.
Caiaphas was the high priest.
For this year.
Right. And so what happens is inappropriate procedure, they go to Annas first. And then to the high priest. So they're not following procedure. And like you said, Annas had a particular beef. Oh, fish.
Fish beef.
Bear. Now we find that a lot goes on in Matthew and Mark, in which John is silent about. This is where they had the whole Sanhedrin together. And they questioned Jesus and said, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, Jesus said. We don't find John mentioning any of that. Okay? And then we pick up on John once again at verse 26. Oh, sorry, 25. As Simon Peter stood warming himself, he was asked, you are not one of his disciples, are you? He denied it, saying, I am not. Verse 26. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. Didn't I see you with him at the olive grove? Now that's interesting. There's another ingredient there, in that the man who questioned him was also a relative of the man who had his ear cut off.
Well, he was also at the garden.
Yep, he was also at the garden. So it's interesting. What we draw from that is another thing. Maybe for Peter may have recognized him, maybe not. But obviously from his questioning would have realized that he was, and maybe he was going to have some beef with Peter for cutting the ear of his relative, his cousin. Okay? So that also prompted Peter to say, you got the wrong guy. Okay? And again, Peter denied it, and at that moment, a rooster began to crow. Let's do that. Come on, Eddie, crow like a rooster. Oh, come on, Eddie. Then it goes all the way over down. There's a lot of other things, on which there's a meeting with the whole Sanhedrin and stuff. But John picks up. Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. So there's no meeting of the Sanhedrin. Interesting. Went directly from Annas to Caiaphas. I have to watch myself because sometimes I've called Annas Enos. You know, I don't want to make that mistake. By now, it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanliness, the Jews did not enter the palace. They wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So it's interesting, in the other ones, Jesus had the Passover meal. That's where we have instituting of communion. And in John it says that the Passover meal hadn't been done yet. Interesting. I don't know what to say of that and make of that. It's just, I don't know. Maybe Jesus decided to have it eat earlier because he knew he wasn't going to be around. Okay? But usually it happens on that Friday night that you'd have the Passover meal. So Pilate came out to them and asked, what charges are you bringing against this man? If he were not a criminal, they said, we would not have handed him over to you. In other words, what were they saying to Pilate?
Just assume he's a criminal, that we're not going to give you any charges.
Trust us. Trust us. Don't you trust us? Yeah. We wouldn't bring him to you unless he were a criminal. Trust us. Pilate was politically savvy enough to know that there might be corruption in the FBI. There might be corruption in this or that, and that you don't necessarily go by the opinion of others, no matter who they are, before you see the facts.
We should always be careful when somebody says, trust me. Trust me. Just trust me.
Ever lied to you before? Yeah.
In my version, even it says that Jewish leaders were always aggressively defiant
Oh, yeah.
to things.
Yes. They were trying to hold on to their power, trying to gain as much as they were. A lot of times the governors were released because they couldn't keep a lid on stuff. So they knew the pressure point for Pilate. You want your job, you want to keep in your high position, then you've got to pacify us. Now when it says the Jews, who are they referring to? Is it referring to the whole Jewish community?
The ones in power.
The ones in power.
Probably the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
Yes. That's important to realize. When he talks about the Jews, he's not talking about the ordinary Jew. He's talking about those in power, the Pharisees, the priests, the scribes, So House of Representatives, the Congress, You know,
Mhm.
those of the establishment who don't get elected but are in power because they've been there forever. Okay, buddies boost them up to a higher position. I'm not trying to make a political statement, except for we see this type of behavior in this culture
Today.
today.
Yes.
We see the same type of behavior. I'm reading through Jeremiah right now, and I see it there in Jeremiah. And God said, I had enough. I'm bringing you down. I'm bringing all you down. But there's a group that's going to be taken off to captivity, and they're going to be okay, and they're going to be brought back. But those here who remain, I'm sorry, plague, sword, and famine. Ouch. And we see that the same collusion, if you would, people that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's why we have the system of government that we do in the United States, which I'm very proud of. But this is true. Now, on John it says, Pilate said, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law. What bother me? You're trying to put me in a corner. You judge him by your own law. But we have no right to execute anyone. So judge him. You don't necessarily have to execute him. So obviously by saying that, he then discerned that their real goal was to execute this man. You want to do him away. Do away with him. This happened so that the words Jesus had spoken indicating the kind of death he was going to die would be fulfilled. Prophecy. He was going to be crucified. Okay. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoning Jesus, and asked him. So he didn't want to do that in front of them. He wanted to speak to Jesus privately. You interested? Come on, Jesus. I want to know the truth. I see their game, their political game.
But
I don't want to be sucked into that.
Pilate didn't want to lose his topness, his
position
of high rank and authority.
So he said to him, are you king of the Jews? Okay. Is that your own idea? Meaning, is that what you feel from what you've heard about me? Okay. So you make a decision. Who am I? That's always the case in faith, that we are asked to make a decision. Now, in some of the other Gospels they have that all of a sudden Jesus saw them talking and Jesus said to his disciples, who do people say that I am? Remember? Oh, prophet, John the Baptist. But who you say that I am? And Peter spoke boldly, says, you are the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, no one's disclosed this to you except for God himself. What a wonderful commendation. But then he screwed it up, as Peter oftentimes does. Or did others talk to you about me? So he's trying to make, what have you heard? What have you learned? You make a decision. Why do you need me to confirm or not confirm? You make a decision. You've heard what I've done. You've seen. What do you believe? Jesus always asks the questions. Doesn't necessarily give us the answers. The answers are found in answering ourselves the question. Okay? Am I a Jew? Pilate replied. It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done? And Jesus doesn't really answer the question, does he? He says, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. They didn't fight. They didn't resist. You know, this is the testimony of the church. As I look over here at the voice of the martyrs in other countries, if I look back in history with the early church, when all of a sudden the Jews were persecuting them, then all of a sudden the Romans were persecuting them. They certainly had the numbers that they could have picked up swords and they could have won the day, but they didn't. See, by the nature of love that Jesus taught is sacrifice. Now, someone would say to me, one of my military friends, would say, well, does that mean I'm not supposed to ever protect my family and, my country? It's a totally different question. You find in the Old Testament, there were times, but too often we rise to war. And I think the witness of truth comes through willingness to sacrifice. And as I said before, I have this feeling that Christianity in America is going to come gradually under the similar persecution that we have found with other Christians in other countries. God will weed out his people who really are standing with me and who are not. Those who pick up and resist by the powers of this world, those who live by the sword die by the sword. And we look for a kingdom that is yet to come that does not have that violence. It's a rough thing to talk about, and I've had to talk to soldiers who, they wanted to serve their country, and what that might mean as far as killing of men, women, and children.
Take a life.
Yeah, but like I say, but most of the people, most of the soldiers, if they get the proper counseling, if they talk about it and let it out, then they're going to say why they served a particular branch of service or what they did learn out of their experiences in a positive way. And I'm sure they felt that God was with them on their side.
That's just it. The power is in the question.
Yes.
If we never question it, then we never have any moral conscience by it. When we do take a life, even if it's a life that is crude, rude, and whatever, it still should bother us inside. And that's part of the counseling that needs to be done when people come back from war.
I think
And
that's
even
the
before
problem
they go.
that's out there now too, is they're not getting the counseling
No, they're not.
that they should.
No, they're
They
not.
might go and talk to somebody, but that so-called
And I think-
counselor talking to them.
And I think tied into the love of the church is like when you have, how do you put this? If you have a skirmish or you have a struggle or an interior war, it can make you stronger. It makes you want to fight and stick up for things and support.
And it's good to
Your
fight and
beliefs.
stick up for things, but how you fight and stick up for things matters.
Right. But
How you engage in the war matters.
mhm.
So all of a sudden you get prisoners, like in Vietnam, and it's a baggage to have to care for them, take them with you. So it's better that we just.
I just
And
sort
they're
of-
miserable,
yeah,
right?
I just sort of mean that.
That's not what-
No. I mean like stepping outside your comfort zone, and then you start seeing it from, oh well, maybe I can help this person, or I can help this group of people, and bring them into the fold.
Christ is found in the tough questions. And sometimes we don't like to ask the tough questions. And we have different answers to those tough questions. And that's okay. I think of the story that came out, if you remember, it was a wonderful movie in which this man was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he was not going to take life. He went through and was beaten, he was persecuted and everything for his spiritual beliefs. He just wanted to become a medic. He refused to carry a gun. But how many lives did he save? Did he serve faithfully? Yes.
I think so, yes.
How we serve matters. See, would I have disagreed with him? Yeah. I could carry a gun. But I don't know what that would have done to me. To kill someone, I never had that, have to do that. I do know of other people who've had to. And I know of the torment within their souls. So, get away from that.
God's kingdom is a peaceful kingdom, not a violent kingdom.
That's right. And that's what he's putting forth here. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight. And now my kingdom is from another place. You are a king then. Jesus answered, you are right in saying that I'm a king. In fact, for this reason I was born. See, the reason why I was born, kings are usually born into their position.
Mhm.
Right? A prince, firstborn.
The
Yeah, because
royalty stays royalty.
That's right.
Especially in England.
That's right. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. This is a point. This is a teaching moment. Everyone who is on the side of truth, listen to me. What is truth? With this, he went out to the Jews. Now, that's a good struggle he's in. Because here's the truth. If I go against these Jews, there's going to be repercussions. If I go against those Jews, there's repercussions. If I go with them, there's repercussions because I'll offend my own moral conscience. I feel for Pilate. I really feel. And I think Jesus felt for him as well. Then we come back down, as I see, down to John 18:39. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the King of the Jews? The other passages will have spell out Barabbas. Have a little bit more dialogue there. They shouted back, no, not him. Give us Barabbas. Now Barabbas had taken part in a rebellion. So there's a choice. We know this man had killed Roman soldiers. If I release him, he's going to join the terrorist organization, and he's going to kill some more of my soldiers. I don't really want to release Barabbas, but they're calling for Barabbas. Ah, boy. So, as he goes down, it says, Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they clothed him in purple robe and went up unto him again, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! So his intention there was, if I show that I mistreat this man, he'll still live. I don't have to compromise my personal integrity. Okay? But I don't give these Jews what they want, and, all of a sudden, I do what's wrong.
But he got a little more scared too when he found out that Jesus claimed to be the Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's he heard that and he probably somewhat believed it. So that scared him even more, in not betraying Jesus.
If you have to face an enemy, if you faced an enemy based on political motivations, that's one thing. But you cannot kill an ideology. So when we're fighting in Afghanistan, or when we're fighting in some other countries, we're not just fighting a political entity. We're fighting an ideology. And ideas don't die. Okay? And they come back up. And they struck him in the face. Once more Pilate came out and said to the Jews, another time, look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis of charge against him. When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and a purple robe, Pilate said to them, here is the man. So in other words, see, I abused him for you. Now, let's settle this, And as soon as the chief priests and the officials saw him, they shouted, crucify, crucify. They wouldn't let Pilate have any way out. But Pilate answered, you take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him. So he gave them permission. But he was going to put his hands to it. That's one of the other versions that has him washing his hands of this man's innocent blood, as to demonstrate. But there's a problem with that. When we know what is right, we can't easily wash our hands by just acquiescence. 19:7, the Jews insisted, we have a law, and according to our law he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, because there are people who are going to have his ideology, who are going to feel that he is the God, whether he believed him or not. And this means that how many fronts, how many battles can I have?
And the ideology can go on after he's crucified and gone.
Well, Pilate might have felt that could be true.
Yeah.
After
Could
talking
be.
to the man.
Could be. Where do you come from? He asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. Do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you? And Jesus answered, this is famous. It's only found here in John. Okay? You would have no power over me if it were not given you from above. Therefore, the one who has handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. Ooh. So he's actually helping Pilate. He says, yeah, if you hand me over to them, you're committing a sin. But is there different grades of sin? Jesus said, The one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. All sin is sin. All sin is deserving of death. But in our earthly understanding of right and wrong, there are sins and greater sins
Well,
and lesser sins.
Pilate was part of the plan.
Yes. I just think that it's important for us to realize when we're dealing with other people, we can think, boy, that person's life is really messed up. You know, they've made choices that are just destroying their life. And we can look at ourselves and say, man, we got it right. And words and expressions like this also help us to realize there are different gradients of sin. And we are all guilty of sin. And sin deserves the same punishment. We need as much grace as the person who is correct.
We want to believe that the sin isn't truly affecting us, but it really is. The other people's sins.
We like to minimize our culpability, and we like to pacify ourselves that we're safe and good
It's not
by
my
pointing
problem.
out
Yeah.
the evils and
It's
sins of
not my
others.
problem. I didn't cause it.
I was duped. I was forced.
I was duped.
From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jews kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. And when he claims to be a king, opposes Caesar, and that was the law." So what they're reminding him is that these heads of the Jewish household would send a letter to the Senate or to Caesar saying, "Your man Pilate refused to exercise his authority in killing a man who claimed he was king. It was usurping your authority." What would happen to
I
Pilate?
was just gonna say, we know what Pilate would end up.
Harry Carey time.
Right, yeah.
That was blackmail.
No wonder
That was the
he
blackmail.
became Ethiopian.
That's very true. That's the blackmail. When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judge's seat at a place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of Passover week, about the 6th hour. "Here's your king," Pilate said to the Jews. And they shouted, take him away, crucify him." "Shall I crucify your king?" "We have no king but Caesar." "Oh, yes, yes. How convenient." Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified.
But weren't some of the Jews who supposedly believe in God supposed to be considered God as their king?
Yeah, but that was always the problem with the Jewish problem. And it's also going to be the problem of any country in which there's Christians, because we recognize that there's only one king. And so Jesus reigns in our heart and our lives over that of any political entity. That means that sometimes I'll go along with the authority, and sometimes I will resist the authority. But if I resist the authority, I've got to be prepared to pay the consequences. Just like Martin Luther King Jr., or those who sat down where dogs and police officers were beaten against them. You're willing to pay the price. And because they're willing to pay the price, instead of fight back, as Malcolm X wanted, they won the hearts of America. So, sometimes it takes sacrifice. So they went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. Okay. In Mark it says there are 2 robbers. Matthew calls them 2 robbers. Luke doesn't say that they were robbers, they were criminals.
Well, didn't one of them have a conversation with Jesus?
Yes. Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this sign, and for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Greek, Latin, and Greek, so that everyone that spoke any of those languages would know. Okay? This is the reason why this guy died. These others were criminals. He just claimed to be king of the Jews. Not of Rome, king of the Jews. the chief priests of the Jews protested to Pilate. Why not? He's putting the responsibility back on them. Do not write the king of the Jews, but that this man claimed to be the king of the Jews. And Pilate answered in rebellious attitude, what I have written, I have written. Suck it up, cupcake. You can push me so far. You can only push me so far. When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, divided them into 4 shares, one for each of them, and the undergarment remaining. The garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let's decide by lot who will get it. And the other versions just had, they took his clothing and casted lots. A seamless garment
That must have been
was
an
very
interesting
valuable.
garment.
Yes.
That must have been interesting.
I have it, Jesus was a blasphemous,
Yeah.
guilty of blasphemy. And that it was all sorts of elements that's why they wrote so many things on that paper that was attached to the cross.
The soldiers that crucified Jesus, they got paid by the clothing and other things that they got, so they could. And so a seamless garment would be very valuable. No chafing,
Yeah.
rubbing in the wrong way.
Yeah.
How Jesus got that, we don't know.
And there was no easy way to divide it.
There's no easy way to buy. If you cut it, it's.
It's come apart.
So this is what the soldiers did. You see, we go back over to John. I'm trying to find where John is here. Near the cross of Jesus, verse 25, stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. Now, his mother's sister is Salome. And that's the reason why Jesus was at
Was
Cana
that the
of
mother
Galilee.
of John?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So John was related to Jesus
Cousin.
as a cuz. But they didn't have jets and trains and stuff. They could go through life and never see one another. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, the disciple took her into his home. And
There was no mention of his siblings being there, was there?
with James, the Lord's brother, they didn't necessarily believe in him, but James became one of the martyrs.
But was he at the crucifixion?
We don't know. I would presume he
I don't
would
think
be.
there's any mention of it.
I would presume he would be. The cucaracha. No, it was the day of preparation, and the next day was to be the special Sabbath, verse 31. Because the Jews did not want the body left on the cross during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. Okay, that's not mentioned, but in John. The soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water, which is a sign of your heart is burst. Okay? The man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. So John's reporting, I'm the one that stabbed him in the side. So there's a soldier that did that. Think he became a Christian? I think after he was explained that this was also predicted.
Maybe.
Because this was predicted in Scripture. He knows that he tells the truth, and he testifies so that you also may believe. So he believed. Awesome. These things happened so that the Scripture would be fulfilled. Not one of his bones will be broken. That comes from Exodus 12:46, Numbers 9, verse 12, and Psalm 34, verse 20. The prophecy. And another scripture says, they will look on the one they have pierced. And that's Zechariah 12:10. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Why would he do that? He is a disciple. He is one of those in the Sanhedrin. Did Jesus have any impact on those who are the religious leadership? Yep.
Mhm.
Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jews. I don't know how long he kept the secret. With Pilate's permission, he came. He took the body, and he was accompanied by Nicodemus, mentioned in John chapter 3. So you want to know what happened to Nicodemus as he came and questioned Jesus? About his faith that he found was going nowhere. Okay? Unless you are born again. Unless you know.
Nicodemus only visited him at night.
Mhm.
He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds.
That's a lot of spice.
That's a lot of spices. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices and strips of linen. This was in accordance with the Jewish burial customs at the place where Jesus was crucified. There was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, which no one had ever been laid, because it was a Jewish day of preparation. And since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. It's interesting to know, well, why did the women come to the tomb? Because tradition had it that the men would not do, they might put the body someplace, but they would not do the embalming. It was the woman's task and role to be able to wash, clean, kind of embalm the body. And so they probably were a little bit upset, Joseph and Nicodemus. You're stepping your grounds. It's our responsibility. There's also more fact they love Jesus, and sometimes you want to do something special for the one you love when they die, and just helps to soothe the pain.
But they didn't come until the next day.
But they didn't come to the next day.
Why?
So
They came
we're going
several
to
days
end
later.
there. And the challenge I'm going to give you for this next week, we're going to finish the resurrection appearances in the session. We're going to finish John in one session. We already did this back in the spring. We looked at the resurrection. May? In May, we looked at the resurrection appearances in John. We're just going to go through them, highlight the differences between them and the other Gospels. And so I'd like you to read through those and see, what are these differences? Okay? That's important for you to see. Realizing that John's purpose was to teach, because the narrative has already been around. He's filling in information, and he's preaching to a new congregation, a congregation that is both Jew and Gentile. And he's addressing a world in which there's all sorts of different challenges to the faith in Jesus. There was challenges of Gnosticism, it was called, and some other things in which was pseudo-Christian, but not Christian. Okay? Not really following the teaching of Christ. And so that's why John is so very, very important. Any questions or observations? Very good. Let's have some prayer. Gracious God, thank you for your presence with us. Thank you for the truth of your word that's laid out for us. Help us to appreciate it. Help us to take it in, to apply it to our lives. Help us to do it with integrity. Just as we see the dangers of Judas, he had his own agenda, though he thought it was Christ's. Or of Pilate, who had integrity, but compromised his integrity in order to save his hide. Oh Lord, help us to be those who follow you thick and thin, when it's difficult and when it's easy. For this we humbly ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then after we do John, we may start at Matthew. And what I probably will do is I'll look at the beginning of Matthew, comparing the birth narratives of Matthew and Luke, because that's where the birth narratives really are, because we'll be in Advent. So I ended us with the resurrection and All Saints' Day. And now we'll go back into talking about his birth.
I was a little bit lazy yesterday. I was tired. Monday was a 30-hour day.